Okay, hello. Welcome to another Zoom group. You're all welcome, people here, and if you're watching this on video, you're welcome too. We'll start off with a bit of meditation just to really broaden the sense of communication that's going on right now. So, ostensibly, you are in a room somewhere, looking at a device, laptop, tablet, phone, something like that. And you can see, a little picture of me, hear my voice. But you're kind of, from one perspective, you're on your own in that room. So just hold on to that and close your eyes. And I like to just close my eyes when I'm meditating. I don't like to get into a special meditative position. I like to just see where I'm at rather than get into an unnatural position, because then I miss the opportunity to see how my body is like. Because what nearly always happens to me is I close my eyes and immediately I realize I'm not comfortable. I realize I'm not sitting comfortably. And it's so funny because before, when my eyes were open, if I'd been asked, are you comfortable? I would have said, yeah, looks great. So I'm grand. As soon as I close my eyes, I become immediately more aware of my body. And I discover that I don't want to have my legs crossed. I want to have them flat on the ground, or I want to have my spine more erect. I want to sit up a bit straighter, or I want to drop my shoulders. So yeah, I encourage you to do that. Scan your body. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail now, but if you're on your own, if you're meditating on your own, if you just sort of scan your body from your head down to your toes and back up again. And, you could think of your attention like an iron. If you've ever done any ironing, it sort of smooths out all the wrinkles, your attention. So if you feel, if you are traveling down your spine and you're like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable, well, you'll just find yourself sitting up a bit straighter, sitting back a little bit further in the chair, pushing yourself back into the chair and your spine getting straighter. I mean, it's a nice mental image when it comes to spines. I think it comes from the Alexander technique to think about your head being, pulled up towards the ceiling, as if there's a string attached to the top of your head and it's pulling up to the ceiling. That just naturally kind of straightens out your spine and elongates it. It's just a nice way to do it, rather than forcing yourself into a rigid kind of upright position. As you put your attention in your abdomen, it's good to, it's like layers of letting go can go on there, because there's a lot of conditioning can go into the abdomen of hold it in, don't let it flop out. But for meditation, you have to let it flop out. You have to let it flop out so that you can breathe better, and that you can really be at ease in your body. Because you'll notice that the more you let your intestines go and you let your belly flop, the more your diaphragm can move more freely. And in meditation, it's always good to take some nice deep breaths. It's a good way to kind of signal your body that you're doing something a bit out of the ordinary. And you can breathe two ways. You can focus on the breath coming in through your nose and mouth, or, down into your lungs. And there's a kind of conscious quality to that, where some part of you is going, yes, I'm going to take a deep breath now. Yes, that's going to happen. Or you can you can breathe more energetically. You can focus on the energetic breathing that goes on, and that comes through a different way. If you think of your body, the center of your body like a cylinder, energy breathes itself into that cylinder from your seat up into your body rather than coming down from your head. It comes up. Um, it's not really, if you think about a picture of a pelvis, the pelvic girdle, it comes through the center of that, right? So it's not bang on through your genitals. It's not, it's not exactly through there. It's more, if you think of it more as that kind of cylinder, and it's coming up through the middle. That's energetic, and the two of them kind of interlink. But the difference with the energetic one is that it feels like it's breathing into you. That's my experience of it anyway. So your body feels more like a glove puppet, and energy is being breathed into it by life, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It's animating your body, and the two go together. The breath in through your mouth, the sort of oxygen breath, and the energetic breath. And how you know is, right, if you take a nice deep breath out and don't breathe in, just hold it out, and you'll feel the energetic breath coming in, and it in a way kind of triggers the in-breath. And what I find really lovely about becoming a bit more aware of that energetic breath is it is a feeling of life or the universe or something loving you into life. Okay, so if you just bring your attention to your hands and the sensation in your hands, and if you notice that the sensation in the front of your hands, the palms of your hands, that may feel different to the backs of your hands. The tips of your fingers may feel different to the heel of your thumb. There's a lot of different sensations going on in your hands. But just take a good sort of snapshot of that, get a good reference for what that feels like. Now, with your eyes closed, have a sense of pulling back from your body. Have a feeling of your body being a bit like a jelly mold, like a body-shaped jelly mold that you're pulling back from. You've closed your eyes, so you're not seeing into existence anymore. So you're pulling back into inner space. Going deeper into inner space. And if you let go of the idea that inner space is limited to the contents of your body, like that you're going back into a much bigger space than just your body. And back here, behind the scenes, you can connect with lots of different things and people. So holding that kind of snapshot you took of the sensation in your hands, in your own hands, and what that felt like. If you want to just reach out on either side of you, I'm going to just stretch your arms out on either side as if you're reaching out to touch somebody else. You can start off by just kind of bringing me to mind, and that you want to get in touch with me, connect with me, because you can connect with me behind the scenes here. And how that'll represent itself is you'll have a feeling of there's the quality of my own hands, and then there's something else. There's some other um, energy or sensation there that's slightly different to when I had my hands down by my side or when I had my hands on my lap, or before I brought this to into my attention of connecting with John. And now I've got a sort of sense of something that's familiar but a little bit other than what it was before. Well, that'll be me. You'll be getting a sense of me behind the scenes. And if your mind is freaking out a little bit, going, oh, how could that possibly be? And science and physics, and what about this? And he's in a different country, blah, 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 blah. Then just make a little arrangement with your mind to just go, yeah, we can think about all that later. But for now, just want to kind of concentrate on the sensation in my hands. And what does it feel like? And do I have any sort of a sense of what he's talking about? That there's something, some other thing, other quality there that I'm connecting with. And if you're watching the video, you can do this too, right? Because behind the scenes, space and time, they operate differently. So even though your mind will be going, but this is a recording, you know, that's using kind of linear time, which is mostly in existence. But back here behind the scenes, time operates differently. So you can still connect with me. You can still get a feeling of, if you have your arms outstretched, you can get a feeling of something else going on, some other quality there. And now, as well as me, you can include the other people in the group. In existence, we're all in different parts of the world, but out of existence, we're all connected. We're all connected, and you can get a sense of that connection just in the sensation of your hands. And as it says, space and time are different here, so it's not like you have to sort of visualize everyone being in a big circle or anything like that. You can all at the same time get a sense of the group that are here as part of the Zoom group. And if you're watching the video afterwards, you too can get a different sense, because you will have all gone well. You will have had a sense of me. And then on top of that, there'll be like others there as well. You're like, oh yeah, there's something slightly different there. You may feel it quite strongly or not. And it's fine if you don't feel anything. So you also can get a sense of all the people who are going to watch this video, because space and time operate differently. And if you're watching the video, you can have a sense of me, the group that are here now live, and all the people who have watched the video before you and done this, and all the people who are going to watch the video and do this. Because behind the scenes, there's no limits to all that sort of thing. And the nice thing about doing this, about including this behind the scenes aspect of the communication, is that there's always people you can connect with. When people talk about the profound realizations where they go, oh, wow, I went on this ayahuasca trip and I had this amazing realization, or I went on this acid trip, or I fasted for 40 days, or whatever. And the amazing thing is, we're all connected. Well, that's a beautiful realization. But where you feel that and where that person would have felt that would have been here behind the scenes, where we are all now. And you can feel that too now. So there's always people there. There's always someone to connect to. You're not on your own. Okay, so if you feel like you've traveled very deeply inside yourself, that feeling of traveling deep is a lot more to do with your nervous system than that you've actually gone anywhere. But if you feel like it would be too disorienting to just open your eyes, then that's fine. You can sort of have the feeling of coming back into the room that you're in before you open your eyes. But I would encourage you to go towards having a sense of being able to hold the inner space and then open your eyes and hold the outer space as well. So to be able to hold the two together, inner space and outer space. And what you can do is you can kind of open and close your eyes and kind of check back in with it, and kind of, because as soon as you open your eyes, vision is really distracting and it's really convincing. Meaning it sort of looks really real and everything, this kind of illusion that we all communicate through, it looks really real, and you can get distracted by that. So you can kind of open your eyes and go, okay, here's the room, here's the phone, there's John's little head on the phone talking, and then you can close your eyes again, and you can get a sense of, oh yeah, but I'm still connected with that behind the scenes, that deep behind the scenes kind of quality. So yeah, open and close your eyes as you would like. Okay, well, as I've said before, but I'll say it again, this is the time of the teacher is over, the time of the guru is over, the time of the spiritual teacher is over. We're all kind of the teacher now. It's this idea of the we're all the Buddha now. We're all helping each other home. So I'm just sharing my perspective. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, or that I know that there is any, ultimate truth or anything like that. So having said that, does anybody have any questions or concerns or feedback or things that are on their mind? I'd much rather talk about what's of interest to you than, I have some questions that have come in, but I'd much rather talk about what's of interest to you. So anybody got anything? You can either text it through or you can chat away. Yeah, so I'm not sure if someone's trying to turn their mic on or not there. Okay, so someone is saying, I read your book. Great. Which one? I've written 4. So I was wondering about enlightenment. Mayonnaise. I was wondering about enlightenment. Like anybody can get enlightened. So you're asking me, can anybody get enlightened? I think that's what they're asking me. I don't know. You think you know that anybody can get enlightened? Yeah, enlightenment's a funny thing. It's like there's no blood test for it. It's not like you can take an exam for it. It's not like you can prove it. And it's changed. It used to be, you used to have to do miracles. You have to walk on water, or you have to do, bilocate or trilocate or disappear or levitate or all that kind of thing. For my understanding of it and my experience of it is that it's a very personal thing. So if somebody says they're enlightened, great. It's really between them and them. Like, it's not like, it's not like it really matters to anybody else. And I found that in my experience, being enlightened is a little bit like being a vegan. Before you're a vegan, nobody cares what you eat. You could eat the worst kind of junk and no one would bat an eyelid. As soon as you mention that you're a vegan or it comes up, suddenly everyone becomes the protein police. And they're all like, so what about this? And what about that? And you get a million questions about your diet that are nothing to do with anybody else except you. And it's kind of similar with enlightenment. It's like, I've like when I got enlightened first, I did kind of mention it to a few people because I thought it might help them. Um, but I very quickly discovered that people react very badly to it, and would either sort of get into trying to convince me that I wasn't, or it would just really bother them. It was like almost like, how dare you? And really it had nothing to do with anybody else. Because as I talk about it in Maya Noise, like really it became a thing for me. Like I really wanted to get enlightened. I really sort of thought it would be the solution to a lot of problems for me. And in one way it was, but then in another way it wasn't at all. It didn't, it is that kind of cliche of, I think it's a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. That's definitely been my experience. But yet I was profoundly changed by it. And it was a very personal thing to me. And it never wavered and it's never changed it was in September, I think late August of 1996. And it hasn't changed, not even slightly. It's never been a question for me ever since. So if you're like, when you say, can anybody get enlightened? It's like, well, I'm assuming, yeah. I mean, why not? But it's like what that means, it would be so different for one person to another, um, because, I've been around a few people who are enlightened. And yeah, they all have the same kind of fundamental energy. But then, love is the same fundamental energy. The love I have for different people, when I get right down to it, the love is the same. It's not different. The personalities are different. And it's the same, people who are enlightened are, it expresses itself through their personality. So I'm not sure, how am I doing with answering your question? Let's see if am I on the am I actually answering your question or not? So is like a feeling that never went away. Have you feel a little enlightened someday before and then the feeling went away? No, this is different. I've had loads of feelings that have come and gone, for sure. And like a common thing that can happen with consciousness, and it's worth mentioning, is, if you like, I often think of consciousness like a light, like a light above the ground. So the light is here and it casts a circle of light. And as you become more conscious, the light raises up a little bit. So the circle of light gets a little bit bigger. And all around at the edge of that circle of light is like, it's like it's like the cold face of your unconsciousness. And let's say, you have a realization of some kind and the light goes up a little bit and suddenly you can see stuff that you never saw before. Well, there can be all sorts of attendant feelings that come with that, where you're like, oh my God, this feels amazing. I can't believe it. Oh, look, I can see it so clear now, right? And everything, it all makes sense. And just, I feel so clear and brilliant. And then 3 weeks later, you're like, oh, where did that feeling go? I've lost it. It's gone. I'm so unconscious now, which is not the case at all. What happens is that the new becomes part of your awareness, and it just naturally just settles into your awareness. It's not like the light comes back down again, it comes back. It doesn't. You just get used to the new increased consciousness, and you don't have the feelings. That's what's missing, is the feelings, but you still are just as clear and just as, you're still as conscious as you were. It's not like you've become unconscious. So that's a common thing, and that's that. I've had that experience many times, and I've helped lots of people with that, where they'll sort of talk to me, oh, I don't feel I had it, it's gone, and now I was great 3 weeks ago, now I don't. So enlightenment wasn't like that at all. It wasn't like that at all. There was no emotion with it at all. In fact, the lack of emotion was one of the things that I found really difficult. I found it really disturbing, because I built it up in my mind to be this thing, It's like, if I just could get enlightened, that would be just brilliant. All my problems would be solved. And of course they weren't, but and because there was no emotion, I kind of almost expected, like, to hear a big choir singing and have a big light come down from heaven or something, none of which happened yet, maybe. It was so anticlimactic in many ways, and yet deeply profound. Like, I was completely changed by it, but not in a way I thought, not in the way I expected. So it didn't waver at all. Not like, the way feelings come and go. It's always been steady, even when I've been like really, really in great emotional distress. Even when I was suicidal, as I said in the book, even in the depths, and that was as bad as it gets, like, emotionally. Some part of me was going, I think I even checked, because it was so extreme, and it was completely unchanged by it. Which, again, it was like, well, that doesn't fit with anything I ever heard about enlightenment. But anyway, that was my experience of it, and it just did not change, Okay, hang on. So, like, the feeling that never went away. Okay. So did you search for it before with your practice? Oh my God, yeah. I was totally into it for about 10 years. Yeah, I think, as I say, in May Noise, it started with, I was in Amway. I was completely lost. I was so far from myself. I was so removed from myself. And I went to my upline, who had come across Barry Long's. I'd given him one of Barry Long's books, and he'd had a big reaction to it. He didn't eat or sleep for weeks. And then suddenly he was just back to business, like everything was fine. So I was kind of hoping that he'd figured it out. He'd figured out some way to reconcile this with his, this kind of sales thing we were involved in. And it didn't go well. And he just, it became apparent that he hadn't reconciled it, that he just, I don't know where, he just sort of pushed it down inside or something. And I said something about enlightenment, and it came up, and he said, oh, if I was serious about enlightenment, I'd become a craniopsychotherapist. And, I went, that followed me around then for 6 months, and I did that. But it was really, a progression of what started off with Kung Fu, as I've identified it as Kung Fu, but that was probably the first thing I was just conscious of, was like Master Po, in the TV series Kung Fu, Master Po, and he seemed really cool and wise, and then progressing from that onto, Indian Zen masters, and the idea of enlightenment, and how it was like, oh, this is actually not just a TV show, this is a real thing, it's possible, onto Zen masters, and then Indian masters, and all the time the like the paraphernalia or the dramatic side of it, the miracle side of it, got less and less. It was less and less of interest to me, as you go from Zen masters who can do all sorts of great, cool things, and then Indian masters, they can do great things as well. But the closer I got to actually meeting somebody who was enlightened, it was a lot less miracles, and it was more terrifying in a way. And all the time I'd had this association with Barry Long. So I think that guy might have even said it to me. He said I would. Yeah, I think he was something like, he must have really felt, I was attacking him. I wasn't. I was just asking him questions, and I think he just found them very awkward. But I think he was saying I would get as close to Barry Long as I could, and hope that it rubbed off on me. So somewhere that kind of went in, and I did that. I went to see him as much as I could, and I got as close to him. I used to help with the film and video for the meetings, so I got to see him. I got to be very close to him, up close and personal. And in a way that was great, but in another way, it really got in the way. It became a monolith, because Barry was very much in the guru kind of tradition. I'm the master, you're the student, this kind of thing. And of his time, he was a man of his time, but it's not the time now. But yeah, so that's why going to see Catherine Ingram really worked for me, because again, it's just my sort of inner knowing did that. This woman was visiting Dublin, went to see her, and I was sitting there the whole time. She wasn't saying anything that Barry Long said, and she just sounded so different to him. And I was just like grumbling. I had a really good sense of spiritual pride. I'd been around Barry for a good while, and I was like, I knew stuff. And yeah, it really bothered me. And then I went home and I thought, I slept on it. And the next day I was like, I'm going back to see her again. And, the process was happening. I could feel it, but I didn't know what was happening. I just knew it was something about her that I found really disturbing. And first night I sat down the back. This time I sat much closer. I think it was one row from the front. And I was listening to her, and she just was so different from Barry. And I had all these complaints going on in my head. But then something just sort of clicked. I was like, she's enlightened. I just knew she was enlightened. She had the same energy as Barry, exactly the same. And she just, such a different person. Barry was a thunderer, he was a Leo. He'd sit up on the stage and he'd like belt it out like fire and brimstone. He was terrifying, And Catherine was just so lovely. The complete opposite. She was just lovely, and she was just, talking away, but the energy was the same. And like once that was like a set of dominoes. Once I realized she was enlightened, it all happened really quickly. Then it was like, it's the same. It's exactly the same. And if she's enlightened, then I'm enlightened. It's just that was it. That was the end of it. Like that was the flip, right? But then of course my mind came in and was like, okay, that's obviously bullshit. You're obviously tripping. And that's not true. You're not enlightened. You're just, I don't know, you're delusional. So she finished a sentence or something, and I think she was maybe she was looking for questions or something, but I stood up, right? Nobody else was standing up. Everyone who asked a question was sitting down, but I stood up, which is so unlike me. I mean, I've got pretty bad social anxiety, so like to be in a group of a group of people, a crowded room. I don't know. There was about 100 people there. Maybe I felt like 100. Maybe it's only 50. For me to stand up, it was normally it would be quite difficult. And yeah, I stood up and said, "Are you enlightened?" All right, because my mind kind of, checking that I wasn't tripping. And she said, "Oh, well, enlightenment is a very loaded term, and I don't like to use it." I tuned out because I knew she was, and I knew she wasn't giving me a straight answer. And then I heard myself saying, "Well, if you're enlightened, I am as well." It's like my mind I had to declare it, And yeah, so that happened that night, and all manner of things changed in my life afterwards. Seismic changes in my life, but yeah, that was it. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it was a huge thing for me, Okay, somebody else saying, could someone be enlightened and not know it? No, I don't think so. I couldn't be anyway. See, I can only really talk about me. I couldn't be enlightened and not know it, because it's a thing. It's like a laser that goes through my whole consciousness, right? Because I've talked about consciousness being a bit like, I've got my frontal awareness you know, I think of it in terms of a cinema, you know, the analogy of a cinema. So my frontal awareness is sitting in the front row, and it's practically got its nose and up to the screen, right? And I'm looking at everything, you know, and I'm fully engaged. And I think the movie is completely real, and I think I'm real. This personality is real. And then, you know, one seat back, there's another me, and it's observing the me in the front, you know, and it's like, oh, look, there I am thinking everything's real, and look, there I am reacting, and look, there I am thinking that person hates my guts, and thinking that person loves me, and, you know, all the things, you know. But there's a, you know, the one step back, and then in the row behind, there's another me, and that me is going, oh, look at me observing me, you know. And then there's another row, there's another me observing the three in front of me, and so on, back, you know. And usually there isn't a huge amount of like agreement among all the different bits. That's why, you know, I have fights in my head with different parts of me. You know, one part will think, oh, you totally made a mistake there, and, you know, there'll be big conversations and conferences going on about, you know, what I did. But the enlightenment thing was like, it was almost like a public announcement that just came up on the screen, and all parts of me saw it and agreed with it and were congruent with it all at the same time. And that was the end of it. And it was like, it's the one thing everything inside me agrees on. The rest of the time, it's mayhem. Okay. I didn't completely understand what you meant about women and enlightenment. Women and enlightenment. How did you notice that women answered when you talk about enlightenment? They just didn't see. It seems to be a different thing. I mean, I'm not a woman, so I don't know. Okay, and like Barry, for just I'm using Barry because I'm familiar with it. He used to talk about enlightenment all the time, and he talked about love and sex and men and women and relationships and love. He used to call himself the master of love. He used to call himself a tantric master, even though he only knew that word. He didn't know, like, he hadn't studied tantra or anything like that. So he was big into men and women, right? And from having sort of been around a lot of couples and men and women who were going to see Barry, I just kind of noticed it. It seemed to be a thing that men were into much more than women, you know? Like, you get two or three of those guys talking together, they'd be talking about enlightenment, you know? You get two or three women talking together, they wouldn't. They'd be talking about other things like love or, yeah, consciousness maybe. And just from my experience of like a lot of that bad reaction stuff I was talking about from people who, you know, I happened to mention I was enlightened to, it was nearly all men, some women, but mostly men who didn't react well. And yeah, my observation of it is that it, you know, and it's just the women that I've mentioned it to, it just didn't seem to be a big deal for them. It was almost like, yeah, so what? So yeah, that's it just seemed to be a different thing. If anything, there was certain kind of irritation. It's like, why are you going on about that? That wasn't them all. Or there would be just like, oh, okay, almost, oh, that's lovely for you. You got enlightened. Oh, good, that's that's lovely. But whereas men, it was different. So there just seemed to be a different response. I don't know. Like, you tell me. What does it mean to you? All right. Okay. What does enlightenment mean? I missed that one. Well, for me, I can only talk about me, right? For me, in hindsight, it was a hook. I'd put myself on a hook, well, unbeknownst, or I was on a hook, and getting enlightened was like taking myself off that hook. And the hook that I was on was that there was something wrong with me, fundamentally something wrong with me. So I've kind of likened it to, it would be like if you could hear the thoughts of a seed that became a sapling, that became a, you know, a young tree and became a big tree, that if you sort of listened into the seed, and the seed, you heard the seed going, oh, what the hell is wrong with me? I'm not a tree. What is wrong with me? I'm such a failure. There's something wrong with me because I'm not a, you know, a sapling, or I'm not a tree. You know, there's just something fundamentally wrong with me. That's kind of what it was like inside me, you know. Now, it almost wasn't conscious because, you know, I'd been through a lot of person development trainings where I'd got right into, you know, very, you know, emotional, profound realizations about myself. And if you'd asked me before I was enlightened, you know, is there something wrong with you? I would have went, no, no, I'm perfect, just the way I am. And I would have like really, you know, got into a good old fight with you about it if you tried to challenge that. But inside, I didn't feel that. Just, and it's not even, it wasn't even a conscious thing. It was just somewhere I just had a feeling that I wasn't the way I should be, or that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. That's really the only way I can describe it. And now I don't have that at all. You know, I'm very much, I continue to grow and change, and I imagine that will continue. So I'll be more conscious tomorrow than I was yesterday, but that doesn't change that, you know, there's how it is for me, you know. I think that's why I was, you know, able to be suicidal and still know that there was nothing wrong with me. If that, I know that sounds like a contradiction in terms, whereas before being enlightened, I wouldn't have had that at all. So it was like I was on this hook of, you know, something fundamentally not right, and then just going, no, that's not true. I took myself off that hook. That was it. And the hook disappeared, and it's never reappeared. That's, I don't know if that explains it, but that's what it meant to me. That's what becoming enlightened meant to me. So now, you know, if I'm around the Dalai Lama or anybody famous, or, you know, anyone who's supposed to be enlightened, or, you know, who's accredited with that, saints, nobody, I don't feel any different to anybody, you know. I don't feel that we're different. I feel like we're just the same. Whether it's, you know, somebody like the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa, well, she's not around anymore, or a homeless person, or, you know, I'm trying to use cliched examples of different, you know, spectrums, but, you know, that we're all the same. I don't feel any different to anybody, you know, whereas I used to. So yeah, that's what that meant to me. Hang on. Okay. So if you keep growing, is there different levels of enlightenment, although we are all the same? No, I think it's separate. I think it's like that, what I was saying about the seed and the sapling and the tree, like that is continuing to grow, but the essence of the tree, or the essence of what that thing is, that entity is, it doesn't change. And it's that's what kind of enlightenment is. So I'm way more conscious than I was in 1996, hands down. But that's what I meant about it being like a laser. It kind of goes through time as well. That bit, that realization doesn't change. That's kind of an eternal realization, it feels like, which may sound paradoxical, but it's like, that's why I keep going back to like the tree and the seed and whatever, because it's like at all stages in that growth, the tree is still a tree. You know, it's just different names, but it's still, the essence of it is still the same. You know, you wouldn't look at a seed and go, you're a failure. What's wrong with you? You know, or come back to me when you're a tree. I'm not going to take you seriously. You know, it's all, you know, fine. It's all exactly the way it's supposed to be, but it continues to grow, you know. It's like your body continues to, you know, regenerate itself all the time, but it's still your body. You know, that bit doesn't change. How did I get enlightened? I've just explained it. Meditation. Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to meditate a lot. I was addicted to meditating for a while. I used to have a little alarm that would go off every hour, and I would run off and do like, 15 minutes meditation. But then I realized I was addicted to it, because if I couldn't, and of course you can't meditate all the time. It gets just, distracting, or not distracting, but life gets in the way and complicates things, and, you're stuck somewhere and you can't do it. But then I noticed I was getting stressed. I was like, oh no, I didn't get to meditate. Oh, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting a bit attached to meditation. So yeah, I did meditate a lot. I did. I pretty much did the student thing with Barry Long. I basically just, he was saying, I am a spiritual master, and if you stick around me, you'll get enlightened, or you'll get what what? Yeah, you'll get enlightened. Or, well, he didn't. I don't think he said that. Well, I think he did. Yeah, maybe he did. So I did that, and he basically was like, "This is my teaching, and you have to live my teaching. And if you live my teaching, you will, achieve. You'll free yourself, and you'll do all those great things." So I did. I just totally did, and maybe there's a part to that, because there is a lot of value in surrender, and surrendering to something that you perceive is greater than you. Now, that could be just my Catholic conditioning coming out, but it was something about being on my knees. Not that I ever knelt down in front of Barry, but I did internally. Okay, not to him, the man, but to what was coming through him. Okay, because the great thing about gurus is they say lots of great stuff. The difficult thing about gurus is that 90% of what they say is fantastic and so profound and so true and so real. But 10% of it is not. 10% of it's their stuff they're still dealing with, And because it is wrapped around the 90%, it's very hard to separate the two. I couldn't anyway. So when I say like I surrender, or I sort of surrendered to Barry, or I knelt in front of Barry, I'm not talking about his 10%. I'm talking about what I recognized was coming through him, something really profound. Because for me, it went back to years and years beforehand, when I was a teenager. And, as I say, I was like, I had this in me, like when I was 12, I was going to be a priest, right? Which my grandmother was just so happy about, because if you have a priest in the family in Ireland, it's a big deal, It lasted 2 weeks, my vocation, but I don't know if anybody else in my family had that, so I kind of had that thing in me, that kind of spiritual thing. But by the time I was 15, I'd completely finished with the Catholic Church, and I just didn't agree with any of it. So I was a bit kind of, I didn't believe in anything really at that stage. And I was hiking up the side of a mountain with some friends, and like I was a teenager, right? I was completely, full of testosterone and insecurity. So for me to separate myself from the group, very unusual. Okay, but we were hiking. It was a nighttime hike, and the stars were out, and I sort of went up ahead, on my own. I'd never do that back then. And I went so far ahead of them that I, couldn't hear them anymore. And I was just standing up looking at the stars, and just like the Enlightenment thing, I just knew God existed. Not God, old man heaven up in old man, with the beard up in heaven. Not that, but just something existed. In that moment, I knew something existed, and I was part of it, and it was part of me, and I loved it, and it loved me, and that was it. It was case closed, right? And it was so profound, I didn't even say it to anybody. Again, I'm a teenager, I say everything to my friends, nothing is, but I didn't say anything to anybody about that. I was just between me and me. So I kind of had that, and it informed my spiritual journey, I suppose. And, led me from one thing to another. As I said, I did a lot of personal development trainings, intense kind of personal development trainings, but always, reading about spiritual stuff and different masters, excuse me, different masters I'd be interested in. And little by little, it ended up with Barry, you know, because, you know, I knew loads of people who knew, oh, it's Osho now, but he was Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh then, you know. I mean, I could have gone that direction, but, you know, it's always a very personal kind of thing. So Barry just seemed to, you know, fit for me. And so, like, what I was surrendering to was, it was almost like, you know, that thing that I loved was kind of coming through him, right? But so it wasn't him personally, but that idea of surrendering, of getting down on my knees internally, and kind of recognizing the smallness of my consciousness in comparison to the vastness of the consciousness that I perceived that I was part of, but only had a little kind of very small perception of, but yet I could still feel it, you know. I think that was an important part, because that all happened beforehand, you know. But you know, how actually I didn't consciously make it happen. Like, life made that happen, the me getting enlightened thing, because I couldn't have organized it. I mean, as I say, I went along to see Catherine Ingram thinking, not really knowing why, kind of going, well, I'm, you know, it was almost like, I think Barry discouraged it, actually, you know, going along to see other people, you know. I think he discouraged that. So I was being, I was breaking the rules, and yet I still went. And you know, as I say, I described how it happened, you know. So I don't know how, I don't know how that would happen for anyone else, but luckily, you know, life knows how to do that sort of thing, so it kind of takes care of it. And during that time, did you follow all their rules or philosophy? Yeah, fully. Yeah, absolutely. Driven by this feeling of like, yeah, there's something wrong with me. So he's saying he's enlightened, and that's what I want. And he's telling me how to do it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what he says, you know. So as best I could, I did. I followed everything he said, you know. I mean, he didn't have a lot of rules. He just had a lot of, as I say, mostly he was talking about women, men and women, and love, and loving your partner right. And he had some funny ideas about a lot of things, which I adopted and tried to live, you know, quite unsuccessfully. But yeah, I did. I tried to live it all. I was a very good student. All right. Okay. Did not think we were going to go in that direction, but there you go. That's one of the fun things about Zoom group. Any other questions? You could never do that. Follow someone blindly. Yeah, I've got a bit of a thing like that. I'm a bit, even now I have to watch myself. I can't sort of, I'm not great at being discerning like that. Does that mean I can't get enlightened? Yeah, that's it. You're stuffed. No, not at all. No, but I mean, does it matter? Like, really, it mattered to me, you know. But if like it mattered a lot, like it really mattered a lot to me, and that's why I got enlightened, you know. But if it didn't matter a lot to me, I probably wouldn't have. It would have been like, oh, you know, because I hear people, you know, because I'm enlightened, right? You know, when people use that word, particularly if they use it, you know, in a way that's not, you know, that doesn't resonate with my experience of it, you know, you know, my ears prick up. I'm like, what? Enlightenment? I know about that. I don't say that, but that's what goes on inside me. But you know, if it's not a big thing for you, then great. You know, maybe you don't have that hook that I had. You know, like really, it's just a word. It's just a word for a state of being. You know, and I had, you know, I was able to. It was useful for me because I was able to nail down something inside me that just was like a disharmony, a very intense disharmony inside me that ran through the core of me. And I, you know, was able to wrap this idea of enlightenment around it. So I kind of set myself up in this kind of steel trap almost that I had to get through. And for me, getting through it was getting enlightened, and then everything, you know, the trap, everything disappeared. But you know, that's just me. Like, you know, but it's funny because it's common. It's a common thing among people, you know, like it's not like I invented enlightenment, you know, I didn't know anything about it. And then because it, you know, people getting enlightened is the furthest thing from my upbringing. You know, as I say, I had a very, you know, standard kind of Catholic upbringing. And I was born in the 60s. So it was like old school Catholicism, you know, scary God kind of Catholicism, not like friendly Jesus kind of, but you now, no, it was scary God back then, you know. And so it was the furthest thing, you know, but then little by little I heard about it and it became a thing. Okay. I know. I tried with Kundalini yoga and Sikh tradition, but I can't do the group thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, when I say about Barry being, you know, it wasn't like we all had to say prayers or anything like that. But it was so funny, like to watch the dynamics in place, because you're basically you've got a master who's saying, now there's no rules, and you're all individuals. It's like the Monty Python, you know, the Life of Brian. You know, it's like you're all individuals, and we all go, yes, we're all individuals, and we all say it in unison. You know, but um, yeah, I mean, that's probably a good thing, because I kind of think I feel as if I was in three cults in my life. And I would kind of include Barry Long in one of those, even though I'm sure he'd be very upset to hear me say that, because he wasn't trying to make a cult. But I always think of like anything that creates a sort of perimeter around a group of people. And basically, we know the story and everyone out there doesn't know the story. That's what I say, you know, when I think of it as a cult. So I think like Amway was a cult. Some of the personal development trainings I was in were a cult, because and Barry Long was the group, you know, was a cult as well, because it was like, oh, you had to know. We had special language, and you know, things meant, because Barry was a nutcase for language. It was like he had everything had, you know, had a different kind of significance, you know, like he'd talk about the self, right? He had this, you know, thing about the self is the cause of all the trouble in your life, you know, and basically you're trying to diminish the self, you know, like a simple little word like self suddenly became like, oh, is that myself? Is that myself, you know, sabotaging me or whatever? So we had all that, which made it kind of like special lingo, which is very cult like, you know. But yeah, he didn't like demand obedience or give him all your give for us to give him all our money or anything like that. Not at all. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, my wife is similar. She was like, I would tell her some of the stories from that time, and she'd be like, nope, I wouldn't have done any of that. And I think it's just a different personality, you know. Like I notice if I come across somebody who's really saying some good things, I'm like, oh yeah, right, okay, okay. And then when they say the first off thing, which of course they're going to, I'm like, I'm sure they didn't mean that. I'm sort of forgiving them already. And then the next couple of things, I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then they say another off thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's too often. You know, it takes me a while to kind of go, I'm not so sure about that person. I'm not so sure if they're saying all the right things, you know? So I think I just have that kind of personality of like, I'm a little bit like that. Okay. All right. Now, any other questions about enlightenment? Because I've got one other question I want to answer before we wrap up. I will say though, I think it would be lovely if everybody was enlightened. If everyone had what I had, it would be great. I think it would be just fantastic. So I'm not saying that in a judgmental kind of way, like everyone's deficient or anything like that, but I've treated enough people to know that a lot of things go back to this fundamental doubt that I had. I recognize it in other people, and it would be beautiful for everybody to not have that doubt. We just jump forward and just getting on with growing, becoming beautiful trees. Wow, that was a great way to wrap that up. Right, now I have this question. Hang on a second. Okay, so this person says, what are signs that we should take some distance in a relationship? It can be a couple, a parent, an adult child, a friend. Um, well, I can only really talk about my own experience. It kind of comes with that knowing, you know. I mean, there's lots of philosophical, or not philosophical, psychological schools, and you know, couples therapy type things, and family dynamics, and there's all sorts of great stuff that give you great tools for getting different perspectives on your relationship, your family relationship, your healing your childhood, all that kind of thing. Um, I think a lot of it comes down to, if you have a feeling of like, I think I need to get a bit of distance here, I would really look into that, because depending on who you are and what's going on for you and how you're configured, that could be many different things. So for some people, trying to get some distance could be a way of avoiding and hiding and shutting themselves off. Maybe things are getting a bit too real. Maybe I'm feeling a bit too much love for this person. I want to get a bit of distance. So, you know, you'd have to really try and get a sense of what is it about. But just my sense of what this person is asking has more to do with boundaries, and um, the idea of boundaries and the idea of space and distance being a kind of a new idea for this person. So, I mean, of course, if something is abusive, physically abusive, then it's not a question. You just have to get away from it, and get help for yourself. Um, because if you have a pattern of going back to somebody who's been physically abusive to you, you have to recognize that you've got like that's it's not a mental health issue as such, but you've got a destructive pattern running in you. Doesn't matter what you feel, and kind of, if you, the most helpful thing you can do is get yourself to somebody and kind of go, I need help with this because I keep running back into the fist, which is a very harsh way of putting it, but that is what you're doing. And if it was as obvious as that, it would be obvious to you as well that this, you know, it's not rational to do that. So, okay, so abuse, physical abuse, no. And in a way, physical abuse is easier because it's so obvious. There's no question about it. But much harder, in some ways, to see is emotional abuse. And that can be very hard to see, because I've worked with people who have been gaslit for so long by their partner. Gaslighting is a really abusive thing to do, but they've been so gaslit for so long that they don't know how they feel, or what's real and what's not real. Just in case someone watching doesn't know what gaslighting is where you're told in essence, you're told your sense of reality is wrong. It came from this psychopathic husband who was trying to drive his wife insane. It's back in the time when we had gas lights, and when she wasn't looking, he would lower the light down a little bit, and she would go, "Did it just get darker in here?" And he would go, "No, nope, nope, don't think so." And that seems like a really small thing, but over time, he drove her insane by doing that. You just keep changing the gas light, and she'd go, did it just get brighter? Go, no, I don't think so. So she began to question, eroded the bedrock of who she was. So, I mean, that's so abusive. That's such an abusive thing to do. And, I've seen the long-term effects that can have on a person. It's really, really bad. But, compared to physical abuse, it's like very hard to see that, So, in terms of distance, unfortunately, there's no, well, if this and this happens, that's how you know. Because really, if you're coming into consciousness about your own value and what you would have put up with, last week. And then suddenly you're going, shouldn't that's not right. I don't think that that's the way a person should behave towards another person. If that's like a new idea, then the idea of distance and putting boundaries on yourself will be like, will feel, it will trigger all the issues that you had that made you did not see that in the first place. So you'll start to think, oh, well, I'm being a bit cruel here. I'm being a bit harsh. I'm being a bit unloving. I'm being a bit unkind to, subtract myself or get a bit of distance, because everybody, particularly partners and family dynamics, it's a living organism. We're all connected. So if when one person becomes a little bit more conscious and they want to change the dynamic, it's not like you're dealing with a static thing. The others in the in the situation will go, hang on a minute now, hang on, what's all this distance now? Oh, no, you're not allowed now. This is the way you are, and we're going to make sure you stay that way. So you'll get pushback, and the pushback on the outside will reflect your own pushback on the inside, where well, who do you think you are to be saying you need a bit of distance, and what makes you so special, and all the reasons that were going on that kept it in the past. So it's a bit of a it can cause a lot of volcanoes inside, just even entertaining the idea of it. So with most things, meditation is very helpful. I know I keep going on about meditation, but it is really helpful, because what it does is it helps to let all the voices settle down, so that you have a much better chance of hearing the deeper voice, the deeper communication that maybe was saying to you, that's not okay. That behavior is not okay. And, it's not okay for you to stay around that kind of behavior, or to be complicit in it, or to let it go unchecked, because those kind of things, it's like, if you've got those kind of dynamics going on inside where you put up with things, yeah, part of the dynamic will be like, oh, it's just between me and me. I'll just wear it. I'll just put up with it. No one's going to suffer as a result. Well, you suffer. It doesn't go away. There's a part of you that just has a deep sense of justice and injustice, and it will just, it won't let it go. You can feel like, no, it's fine, everything's fine. You're pushing it down, but it doesn't go down. It just comes out the side. So you can get all sorts of difficulties, like sicknesses and pains and all sorts of things. So it's a complicated thing. Okay, so it's complicated, meaning there's lots of different getting distance from people. I'm just going to go back and check the question. Yeah, it'll be different from parent to partner to child. It can mean different things. But really what it comes down to is getting a sense of when you're being abused. And what, like one of the things about people who are abusive is they very, they instinctively will try and convince the person they're being abusive to that they're not being abusive, and that the person is being very difficult by even suggesting it. Like, how dare you think that about me? Or, I'm so hurt that you thought that about me, that I was being abusive to you. That kind of thing. Should completely mess your head up. Like, it just completely, confuse you. They know where all your buttons are as well. So they'll be able to, very skillfully convince you that what you're feeling is not true. So that makes it even harder, So it's the difficult work of being able to hear your own sort of deeper, truer voice, the voice that's completely for you, the voice that's not actually out to get anybody, that's not out to be malicious, but just very quietly going, this is not okay. Okay, because that's really the distance. It's basically if somebody came running at you with a knife, there would be no question about how do I get, should I get some distance here or not? You just run away. Like there's no question that you just run away. Okay, it's like that, but it's so subtle and so confusing that it's hard to put it in those black and white terms. But that is what's happening, and that part of you does know that, and that part of you will be kind of informing you. Because if you're sending me a question about it, if it's enough, if it's come up into your consciousness enough to ask a question of another person about it, you almost already know the answer in all those cases, partner, child, and you know how far and what's okay and what's not okay. And it's okay like to get it wrong, to put too much distance, to be a bit cold. It's okay to make a mistake with it, because if it's a new thing for you, the idea of distance and putting up some barriers, and are not barriers, are they called barriers? Barriers, is it barriers? I can't remember. The psychological thing of where you're, boundaries, that's it, not barriers, boundaries. If you're setting your boundaries, if that's a new kind of thing for you, or if you're setting your boundaries maybe a little bit further out than you're used to, that can feel very odd and uncomfortable, whatever. So, being able to listen to that or to hear that voice is okay. And if you set them too far, that's okay as well. You can readjust them. It's not like, you have to be this fantastic, wonderful person about it. You can make it, you can make mistakes with it and correct, but if you won't make a mistake long term if you keep, if your focus is to listen to the voice that's telling you, put some boundaries in place or get a bit of distance. If you stay with that, even if you go too far in the other direction, it will help you come back to center, rather than some external person who's upset about you disrupting the the family dynamic or the way things were. That'll be pushback. That's a different thing. Like I wouldn't let that person tell you that you've put your boundaries too far. It has to kind of come from you on the inside, and you'll know. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's probably a bit reactive there. I probably shouldn't have moved to Tahiti. I went a bit overboard there. I could probably go home, or whatever. I'm making a joke about it, but it's the distance went too far. That's fine. It's important to give yourself the permission to make a mistake. Let me just check that question again. Yeah, okay. I think I've answered it. Anybody have any questions about that, or reflections, or? How do you check yourself in spiritual practices? I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean? How do you check yourself in spiritual practices? No. More clarity, please. Okay, I get it now. Excuse me. So the question is, how do I check myself in spiritual practices? I was doing meditation and then felt I wasn't growing, so I stopped. So I wonder, how do you check yourself, your inner growing? Comes back to what I was saying about, like, I used to be addicted to meditation, so I had to stop for a while. It's like anything, and now more than ever, it seems to be about being comfortable with uncertainty, and that includes everything, all your sacred cows, everything. So everything is being challenged, and that thing that that say, oh, the only thing that, what is it? The only permanent thing in the universe is change, I think that's kind of what we're living in at the moment. Really, everything is being, anything that's any solid ground is being questioned. That's kind of why I was reading out that poem about stepping, treading lightly over everything. So, like at the moment, I'm in a not doing yoga phase. Okay, I used to do yoga every day, loved it. It's great. I feel great in my body, and it's fantastic. I love doing yoga. Okay, and then when did it stop? About 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, can't remember. I just stopped, dead. And I kind of get up going, am I going to do yoga today? Like, nope. Oh, Okay. And I can feel it in my body. I'm getting a bit stiff. I'm like, oh, when am I going to do yoga again? Now, like I kind of jokingly say I don't have any self-discipline, but I'm not joking. I don't. Like, I know I don't. I can't make myself do things. It has to come from inside. And when it comes from the inside, no problem. Like I just stopped eating sugar recently and cake. I love cake. I mean, I really love cake. Okay. I haven't got much left. Okay. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do all the fun stuff I used to do. So I'm a vegan, right? I'm gluten free. I'm a gluten intolerant. So I can't, so there isn't a lot left, and then just communication. Okay. That's it for sugar. It's like, oh no, because I knew it was just like coming from inside me. Now, if I had kind of went, right, I've read a couple of very significant articles about the damage sugar can do. I'm going to stop eating sugar. That wouldn't have worked for me at all. It wouldn't have stopped me. It might have stopped me for a day or two or three, but no. So I live in a very light way. I live very lightly in my body. I live very lightly in my life, meaning I'm kind of just observing what I'm doing, going, oh, look, there I am not doing yoga. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'd love to do yoga. Okay. Now I could force myself, but I've tried that in the past and it doesn't work. I don't enjoy it. Like I've tried to force myself to do things I think I should do, but it doesn't work. I just don't enjoy it and I don't keep doing it. It just stops. Whereas I've seen myself do things, like I've done a couple of fasts, for example, 7-day water fasts. And other people have like, oh, how did you do that? And oh my God, it's so hard. And it wasn't hard. It was hard. Yeah. But the thing that makes you do a thing, no, that wasn't hard at all because it just was like, okay, I have to do a fast now. Okay, fine. And I read up on it and what you're supposed to do and whatnot, but it was easy. So I've seen myself do pretty amazing things that you could look at from the outside and go, well, that's obviously huge discipline. There's obviously a lot of discipline, and I'm kind of smiling to myself because I'm like, no, I don't have any discipline like that. But I just, when something comes up from inside, to stop then, or to stop to do something or to stop doing something, I just do it. So in the same way, like yoga is a good example because you're talking about meditation. Like I'm watching myself not doing yoga at the moment. I'm just going, oh, I wonder, am I going to do yoga today? And inside I'm light, I'm light on the inside. So I'm ready to do yoga all the time. I'm not like, well, that's it now. I don't do yoga anymore. It was great while it lasted. Similarly with meditation, I haven't had very long periods of not doing meditation. It's kind of changed more than stopped completely. But similarly, if it did stop, I would be the same. I'd just be like, okay, there I am not doing meditation. That's interesting. What's going to happen tomorrow? And what's going to happen in the next moment? Maybe the next moment I will do it. So I think being light is very helpful because then nothing is solid, nothing is, oh, I've got this structure. I am a this, I don't have any of those on the inside. I'm not an anything, I'm not okay, I'm a vegan. But if it came, I mean, I was a vegetarian. This is a good example. I was a vegetarian. I'm trying to remember now. I think I became a vegetarian when I was 22 and I was vegetarian until I was in my 30s, mid to late 30s. And then I was in the middle of meditation and I got this thing of, and I didn't drink at the time. I'd stopped drinking completely for years. And I got this thing of like beer and chicken. You need beer and chicken in a meditation, right? Holy of holies, beer and chicken. I couldn't come up with anything more, spiritual than beer and chicken. But it was the same. It just came up from inside. I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. So I started eating beer and chicken. And I ate meat then for a couple of years. And the same way, just like, so it wasn't like I am a vegetarian, I'll never. It was just like being light with myself. And then similarly, when it had started to come into my mind about, no, okay, I think I'm finished with meat now. I think I'm finished with meat. And it's funny, like my wife was a big meat eater, like loved to cook roasts and all sorts of great things, really into it. And then she read a book about being a vegan, and said to me one day, thinking that I would have a big problem with it. But what had been happening inside me was like, oh, I think I'm finished with meat. I'm just not sure how it's going to go down with Maggie. I'm not sure how I'm going to organize that, And then she just said, I'm becoming a vegan. You're very welcome to become a vegan with me. And I was like, yay. And since then, she stopped being a vegan, but I kept going with it because it's the same. It's just kind of felt right to me. So maybe that's how I check myself. I just observe, and I'm not checking, I'm just watching, because I just have this, like, life's too short to be checking myself for me. Like, life's too short to be hard on myself and not be, or to be heavy with myself, because I have, and maybe this does come from the enlightenment thing. I just have a kind of implicit knowledge that it'll be all, that it's all okay, that that whatever I do is the right thing, and for me, or for the whole, because I'm very conscious of being like, I'm like this little cell in the part of a much bigger thing, so I want to be the best little cell I can be, even though I'm using the language of a very limited perspective, which is what a little cell would have. Um, so I kind of know that if something arises in me to do something or not do something, it's coming from that place. And if it's not, I'll know. It'll reveal itself to me. It's like I can make mistakes. It's not like I look back on the beer and chicken and go, oh, I totally, fell from grace or anything like that. It was like, oh, that's just what I did. So does that help? I'm not sure if I've answered you. I think yes. Good. Okay, good. All right, brilliant. Well, thanks very much for coming along to Zoom group, and see you all again soon.